If someone humiliated, tortured, and murdered the person you love most in the world, would you want them to be hunted down, humiliated, tortured, and killed in return? Or would you just want them to be imprisoned so that they could be stopped from ever doing such deeds to anyone else? Perhaps you'd want them to receive some form of counselling so that they could understand what they'd done and why they'd done it. It's even possible that you would be resigned to the death of your loved one and simply accept what life has given you, seeking no additional justice in relation to the killer. You're grateful for the precious times that you shared with your loved one. You don't want to lower yourself to his level. You wouldn't want your last memory of your so violently departed loved one to be stained with the blood and suffering of yet another human being, no matter how wicked, perverted, or mad he may be. When does justice become revenge? Is it when you want to humiliate, torture, and kill the murderer's loved one so that they can feel what it's like to go through what you underwent? Perhaps you'd consider that his whole family should die, maybe his whole tribe. Would you even go so far as to declare war on his whole society or nation, all those of the same colour or creed? And if one of those people who you have attacked in seeking your justice or revenge considers that you have gone too far and then kills more of your loved ones, would you call what they'd done justice or revenge or a crime? Or if someone acting on your side in dispensing justice or wreaking revenge went a bit too far and did something that you did not think was just, would their secondary action, done in pursuit of justice for your primary cause, be judged to be as unjust as the original action against your loved one? Complex, isn't it? And we haven't even got on to who is and who is not qualified, in your opinion, to be the objective judge or executor of judgment, nor have we covered the consequential judgments that arise where a lack of sufficient or appropriate judgment in the first place by those injured by the initial action is deemed to be a bad judgment because it could, say, act as a bad example to other potential victims who may find themselves in a similar position in the future. The judge was too lenient, judging the Muslim method of chopping thieves' hands off as being, in principle, a just thing when used as a deterrent, if that is, it actually prevents potential victims from being robbed, but unjust in practice when those financially dependent on the now handless thief end up turning to crime themselves merely because the justly handless man can't provide for them anymore and they're starving. Even more complex when the hitherto perfectly law-abiding but now starving children of the handless thief consider it to be just that they've committed their subsequent crimes because the state didn't provide any financial or social support for low-income families. And if these children hadn't committed any crimes, but had just quietly starved to death next to their handless father, then the camera lens pans out, and the question of justice is aimed at society as a whole for failing to anticipate this little problem with hand cutting off, and adequately providing for the innocents affected by it. Oh, it's getting more complex. And that's the point. It becomes so complex that systems need to be created and everything has to be meticulously written down and cross-referenced. And it's only with the involvement of well-informed and rigorously educated experts and with the aid of thousands of thick books written on the minutiae of each subdivision of judgment that we avoid each case having to take so long to consider anew all the actions for which no precedent has been set down in writing, that there'd be an even greater and probably economically catastrophic bottleneck within the legal system which would simply cease to function. As if all the foregoing isn't complex enough for our little brains and are all too ready to react to mammalian hormones, or perhaps because it is so complex and someone wants to take an intellectual or emotional shortcut, religion steps in and introduces divine law, divine judgment. Now our scenario of the starving children of the handless criminal becomes even more complex. Now we have the suffering of the starving children being a just thing, since this life doesn't matter anyway. It's just a testing ground for the next. I'm afraid I'm not going to apologise if this was all a bit convoluted for you, because that's one of my points. Judgment is a very complex matter. That's why it attracts some of the most intelligent and incisive human minds. We haven't even talked about mitigating circumstances, premeditation and so forth. So where's this leading? In what way has religion hijacked justice? Even though it is a manifestly complex field of human life, law does not require religion to simplify it or to make it more complex. Law does not require religion at all, in any shape or form. But putting aside all the complexity of law, you know in your heart when justice has been done and when it needs to be done. The sense of justice as a thing that exists and matters to each of us is a given. What we think are the actions that require judgment to be sought in the first place, and what judgments need to be administered in order to satisfy our sense that justice has been served, well, these vary through time and location and from person to person, unless, of course, a group adheres to an unchanging and unchangeable fixed dogma. Even if you're the most circumspect and liberal judge, and you see someone about to kill your daughter, you might well be expected to dispense a very different form of justice from that which you would dispense in a court case over which you were presiding. And again, this is the point. There is no clear-cut, final, once-and-for-all single book of judgments that any sane person would hold on to for centuries as the only blueprint. Nobody in their right mind would consider that every single judgment they have to make on a day-by-day basis is covered in precise detail in the Quran or the Bible or any other man-made book. That's why anyone who does think this, fundamentalist Christians or Muslims, or whoever, ends up being incapable of functioning as a normal and healthy human, utilizing the very flexibility of mind and action that allowed us to evolve in the way we did in the first place. That is why Islam and fundamentalist religions of any sort don't want to evolve. They can't. They're trapped in a jar full of formaldehyde, fossilized at a specific historical period, usually when their prophets, gods, or holy books are supposed to have started up, and incapable of and unwilling to adapt their judgments to any changes outside of their hermetically sealed bubble. Common law changes and adapts. When computerized child porn and credit card fraud first appeared in the world, common law, normal, everyday law, adapted to encompass them. But look at Sharia law. It makes judgments that are no different from UK common law judgments in one sense. It's just that Sharia law uses a very narrow period of history and the life of only one person out of the tens of billions that have lived on which to base all the judgments since his life and until the end of time for all the remaining tens of billions of people who have lived and will live since Muhammad walked this earth. Is that reasonable? Isn't there some form of hijack there of what would have been a society's pluralistic ability to form laws in keeping with changing times? There is a natural human faculty to want justice, to seek justice, and then to feel as though you have or have not got justice. And this exists inside and outside religions. The form of justice is universal, and would exist whether Muhammad or Jesus had never walked this earth. The basic ability to want, seek, and feel the achievement or otherwise of justice is a natural human phenomenon, a need for closure on a situation, which then allows the ability to move forward and get on with your life. It's shared by all normal people, from the simplest illiterate desert peasant to the most distinguished Chief Justice in the High Court. It's your possession, and yours alone. Roman Catholics are told that justice is decided by the Pope and then the priests as the hierarchy of God's earthly legal team. The Muslim imams talk about their academic version of the Hadith or their interpretation of the Quran as being the one true law, and they are the people who you must trust to tell you what justice means for you and to administer punishment when they wish. It's true that justice is a really complex matter, but each of us, educated or not, religious or not, violent or not, is not only capable of forming their own judgments, but is actually incapable of not forming judgments on a regular day-by-day, hour-by-hour basis. Making judgments, whether you're Richard Dawkins or Abu Hamza, is like breathing in and out. We just do it. That's why religion's a hijacker. It wants to claim the form and contents of justice. For us to believe that some people have a better sense of justice than the rest of humanity, the form, and that these people are, surprise, surprise, the religious clerics themselves. And for us to think that we can only experience true justice, the contents, if it's in accordance with the words in their favourite and unique textbook, the law, dispensed of course by these self-appointed clerics, who are just kindly passing on to us the true judgments of a voiceless, invisible divine judge, for whom they of course are the only spokesmen and mediators. Same thing worldwide, just a different bunch of con men in frocks being paid to represent their own variety of man-made deity. And they do this because they're bankrupt and merely want to distract your attention from understanding that we humans cannot stop our innate mental and emotional cogs of justice whirring in our minds and hearts. And you know that this is true because you couldn't stop yourself from judging the efficacy of the scenarios that I initially mentioned regarding what justice should be dispensed on the hypothetical murder of your loved one. And this should be sufficient evidence for you to suspect that you are the one who has the need for and sense of justice. It's not the clerics. They just want to make you doubt your own abilities to make judgments, so that you more willingly delegate your powers to their higher authority. Again, it keeps them in a job. Apply your own sense of justice to the clerics, to your parents, family, friends, and society, and you judge what their crackpot hand-me-down judgments have done to the dignity of your precious life. How the religious clerics have robbed you, and in their turn your family and friends and society, of the precious tools of judgment that are always there within each of you. They've kept you so busy applying their endless and bizarre judgments to your own life that you've omitted to apply your judgments to their lives. Have a go. It'll be fun to mentally stand them in the dock and accuse them of their crimes against humanity. And my question to you is this. If you'd been born in a different century, a distant country, and within the religion that you judge most harshly, are you sure that your God-given judgments then would be the same as your God-given judgments now?